I remember that there was a lot of crime in Stockton, and I would find bullet shells on the streets occasionally, and sometimes I'd pick them up and keep them as kind of keepsakes. And I woke up to gunshots a couple times. I never saw anyone shoot a gun. I never saw it firsthand, but it's definitely pretty common. I think a lot of the crime there is not necessarily violent, so there's a lot of theft there. And my bike actually was stolen in Stockton, and I got it back about 2 or 3 weeks later, which is kind of a miracle. But we had done something kind of stupid, and we left our bikes on the driveway of a person's house as we've been talking at their door. And the door, we hadn't realized when we set our bikes there, was a little around a corner of their house, and so we couldn't see our bikes from the doorway. And we were there for probably 10 minutes talking to them, come back, and the bikes are both gone, of course. And that's very common. You have to keep a constant eye on your bike, and you have to have good locks because they will get cut if you don't have the good U-locks. But I got my bike back a few weeks later because at the time we had Leahona Bikes. It's a contract with a larger company that sells this brand of bikes that really, they only sell it to missions. And so only missionaries ride these bikes, and that is very helpful because if you see someone on a Leahona, you know that they stole it. And so I told missionaries in my zone, I said, hey, my bike was stolen. This is my first transfer. I really want to get it back for the rest of my mission. And some missionaries stumbled across a guy who was riding it, and they approached him about it and said, hey, where'd you get that bike? And he said, I bought it off a kid on the street for like 60 bucks or something like that, like 80 bucks, I don't know. And they're like, well, that's funny because one of our friends just had it stolen from him. And he started getting all defensive. He was like, oh, look, I just bought it off a kid on the street for 80 bucks. And they're like, okay, well, we'll strike a deal with you. We'll give you $25 right now. It's all the money in my wallet. I'll give you $25 to give the bike over, or we'll call the cops and get it for free. And so that, with some pressure, a little more pressure, persuaded him to give the bike back to them for $25, which I then repaid them for, and I was able to get my bike back, which was worth it because it was like an $800 bike. So definitely don't get your bike stolen in Stockton. That's very common. I know there was a year where Stockton had been rated the #2 crime city in the nation, and there's a lot of reasons for that. I know some of our investigators and people we taught, or people that had been taught by previous missionaries, used to be involved in the crime scene, and they would tell us their stories. And there were a lot of people that had stolen cars just to take them for joyrides, do things like that. So the fact that there's really high crime there doesn't necessarily mean that it's a scary place. In fact, we found that people had a real respect for the missionaries. And on the streets, you could run into people who were from the roughest crowds, who were in gangs, and they wouldn't touch us. And they called us the Jesus people in Stockton because they knew that that's who we were. And every time they talked to us, we talked to them about Jesus. And they were involved in a lot of crime, but they were also people who relied heavily at times, one or another, on their faith, and many of them did believe in Jesus Christ. And so they respected us. And for the people that weren't familiar with that, that didn't respect us in that way, others would stand up for us and would make sure that nobody did anything wrong to us. And so it gave me a lot of confidence as a missionary, just knowing that that was the case, that people really did respect us. And in general, there was violence, but that wasn't really the primary form of crime that takes place in Stockton.